Genesis. Genesis 1. In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was barren with no form of life. It was under a roaring ocean covered with darkness, but the Spirit of God was moving over the water. God said,
I command light to shine.
And light started shining. God looked at the light and saw that it was good. He separated light from darkness and named the light day and the darkness night. Evening came and then morning. That was the first day. God said,
I command a dome to separate the water above it from the water below it.
And that's what happened. God made the dome and named it sky. Evening came and then morning. That was the second day. God said,
I command the water under the sky to come together in one place, so there will be dry ground.
And that's what happened. God named the dry ground land, and he named the water ocean. God looked at what he had done and saw that it was good. God said,
I command the earth to produce all kinds of plants, including fruit trees and grain.
And that's what happened. The earth produced all kinds of vegetation. God looked at what he had done, and it was good. Evening came, and then morning. That was the third day. God said,
I command lights to appear in the sky and to separate day from night, and to show the time for seasons, special days, and years. I command them to shine on the earth.
And that's what happened. God made two powerful lights, the brighter one to rule the day and the other to rule the night. He also made the stars. Then God put these lights in the sky to shine on the earth, to rule day and night, and to separate light from darkness. God looked at what he had done, and it was good. Evening came, and then morning. That was the fourth day. God said,
I command the ocean to be full of living creatures, and I command birds to fly above the earth.
So God made the giant sea monsters and all the living creatures that swim in the ocean. He also made every kind of bird. God looked at what he had done, and it was good. Then he gave the living creatures his blessing. He told the ocean creatures to live everywhere in the ocean, and the birds to live everywhere on earth. Evening came, and then morning. That was the fifth day. God said,
I command the earth to give life to all kinds of tame animals, wild animals, and reptiles.
And that's what happened. God made every one of them. Then he looked at what he had done, and it was good. God said,
Now we will make humans, and they will be like us. We will let them rule the fish, the birds, and all other living creatures.
So God created humans to be like himself. He made men and women. God gave them his blessing and said,
Have a lot of children. Fill the earth with people, and bring it under your control. Rule over the fish in the ocean, the birds in the sky, and every animal on the earth. I have provided all kinds of fruit and grain for you to eat, and I have given the green plants as food for everything else that breathes. These will be food for animals, both wild and tame, and for birds.
God looked at what he had done. All of it was very good. Evening came, and then morning. That was the sixth day. Genesis 2. So the heavens and the earth and everything else were created. By the seventh day God had finished his work, and so he rested. God blessed the seventh day and made it special, because on that day he rested from his work. That's how God created the heavens and the earth. When the Lord God made the heavens and the earth, no grass or plants were growing anywhere. God had not yet sent any rain, and there was no one to work the land. But streams came up from the ground and watered the earth. The Lord God took a handful of soil and made a man. God breathed life into the man, and the man started breathing. The Lord made a garden in a place called Eden, which was in the east, and he put the man there. The Lord God placed all kinds of beautiful trees and fruit trees in the garden. 2 other trees were in the middle of the garden. One of the trees gave life. The other gave the power to know the difference between right and wrong. From Eden, a river flowed out to water the garden. Then it divided into 4 rivers. The first one is the Pishon River that flows through the land of Havilah, where pure gold, rare perfumes, and precious stones are found. The second is the Gihon River that winds through Ethiopia. The Tigris River that flows east of Assyria is the third, and the fourth is the Euphrates River. The Lord God put the man in the Garden of Eden to take care of it and to look after it. But the Lord told him,
You may eat fruit from any tree in the garden, except the one that has the power to let you know the difference between right and wrong. If you eat any fruit from that tree, you will die before the day is over.
The Lord God said,
It isn't good for the man to live alone. I need to make a suitable partner for him.
So the Lord took some soil and made animals and birds. He brought them to the man to see what names he would give each of them. Then the man named the tame animals and the birds and the wild animals. That's how they got their names. None of these was the right kind of partner for the man. So the Lord God made him fall into a deep sleep, and he took out one of the man's ribs. Then, after closing the man's side, the Lord made a woman out of the rib. The Lord God brought her to the man, and the man exclaimed,
Here is someone like me. She's part of my body, my own flesh and bones. She came from me, a man, so I will name her woman.
That's why a man will leave his own father and mother. He marries a woman, and the 2 of them become like one person. Although the man and his wife were both naked, they were not ashamed. Genesis 3. The snake was sneakier than any of the other wild animals that the Lord God had made. One day, it came to the woman and asked,
Did God tell you not to eat fruit from any tree in the garden?
The woman answered,
God said we could eat fruit from any tree in the garden, except the one in the middle. He told us not to eat fruit from that tree or even to touch it. If we do, we will die.
No, you won't.
the snake replied.
God understands what will happen on the day you eat fruit from that tree. You will see what you have done, and you will know the difference between right and wrong, just as God does.
The woman stared at the fruit. It looked beautiful and tasty. She wanted the wisdom that it would give her, and she ate some of the fruit. Her husband was there with her, so she gave some to him, and he ate it too. Right away they saw what they had done, and they realized they were naked. Then they sewed fig leaves together to make something to cover themselves. Late in the afternoon, a breeze began to blow, and the man and woman heard the Lord God walking in the garden. They were frightened and hid behind some trees. The Lord called out to the man and asked,
"Where are you?"
The man answered,
I was naked, and when I heard you walking through the garden, I was frightened and hid.
"How did you know you were naked?
God asked.
Did you eat any fruit from that tree in the middle of the garden?"
It was the woman you put here with me.
The man said.
She gave me some of the fruit, and I ate it.
The Lord God then asked the woman,
"What have you done?"
The snake tricked me,
she answered.
and I ate some of that fruit.
So the Lord God said to the snake,
"Because of what you have done, you will be the only animal to suffer this curse. For as long as you live, you will crawl on your stomach and eat dirt. You and this woman will hate each other. Your descendants and hers will always be enemies. One of hers will strike you on the head, and you will strike him on the heel."
Then the Lord said to the woman,
You will suffer terribly when you give birth, but you will still desire your husband, and he will rule over you.
The Lord said to the man,
You listened to your wife and ate fruit from that tree, and so the ground will be under a curse because of what you did. As long as you live, you will have to struggle to grow enough food. Your food will be plants, but the ground will produce thorns and thistles. You will have to sweat to earn a living. You were made out of soil, and you will once again turn into soil.
The man Adam named his wife Eve because she would become the mother of all who live. Then the Lord God made clothes out of animal skins for the man and his wife. The Lord said,
These people now know the difference between right and wrong, just as we do. But they must not be allowed to eat fruit from the tree that lets them live forever.
So the Lord God sent them out of the Garden of Eden, where they would have to work the ground from which the man had been made. Then God put winged creatures at the entrance to the garden and a flaming, flashing sword to guard the way to the life-giving tree. Genesis 4. Adam and Eve had a son. Then Eve said,
I'll name him Cain, because I got him with the help of the Lord.
Later, she had another son and named him Abel. Abel became a sheep farmer, but Cain farmed the land. One day, Cain gave part of his harvest to the Lord, and Abel also gave an offering to the Lord. He killed the firstborn lamb from one of his sheep and gave the Lord the best parts of it. The Lord was pleased with Abel and his offering, but not with Cain and his offering. This made Cain so angry that he could not hide his feelings. The Lord said to Cain,
What's wrong with you? Why do you have such an angry look on your face? If you had done the right thing, you would be smiling. But you did the wrong thing, and now sin is waiting to attack you like a lion. Sin wants to destroy you, but don't let it.
Cain said to his brother Abel,
Let's go for a walk.
And when they were out in a field, Cain killed him. Afterwards, the Lord asked Cain,
Where is Abel?
How should I know?
He answered.
Am I supposed to look after my brother?
Then the Lord said,
Why have you done this terrible thing? You killed your own brother, and his blood flowed onto the ground. Now his blood is calling out for me to punish you, and so I'll put you under a curse. Because you killed Abel and made his blood run out on the ground, you will never be able to farm the land again. If you try to farm the land, it won't produce anything for you. From now on, you'll be without a home, and you'll spend the rest of your life wandering from place to place.
This punishment is too hard.
Cain said,
You're making me leave my home and live far from you. I will have to wander about without a home, and just anyone could kill me.
No,
the Lord answered.
Anyone who kills you will be punished 7 times worse than I am punishing you.
So the Lord put a mark on Cain to warn everyone not to kill him. But Cain had to go far from the Lord and live in the land of wandering, which is east of Eden. Later, Cain and his wife had a son named Enoch. At the time, Cain was building a town, and so he named it Enoch after his son. Then Enoch had a son named Irad, who had a son named Mehujael, who had a son named Methushael, who had a son named Lamech. Lamech married Ada, then Zillah. Lamech and Ada had 2 sons, Jabal and Jubal. Their son Jabal was the first to live in tents and raise sheep and goats. Jubal was the first to play harps and flutes. Lamech and Zillah had a son named Tubal-Cain, who made tools out of bronze and iron. They also had a daughter whose name was Naamah. One day Lamech said to his 2 wives,
A young man wounded me, and I killed him. Anyone who tries to get even with me will be punished 10 times more than anyone who tries to get even with Cain.
Adam and his wife had another son. They named him Seth because they said,
God has given us a son to take the place of Abel, who was killed by his brother Cain.
Later, Seth had a son and named him Enosh. About this time, people started worshiping the Lord. Genesis 5. God created men and women to be like himself. He gave them his blessing and called them human beings. This is a list of the descendants of Adam, the first man. When Adam was 130, he had a son who was just like him, and he named him Seth. Adam had more children and died at the age of 930. When Seth was 105, he had a son named Enosh. Seth had more children and died at the age of 912. When Enosh was 90, he had a son named Kenan. Enosh had more children and died at the age of 905. When Kenan was 70, he had a son named Mahalalel. Kenan had more children and died at the age of 910. When Mahalalel was 65, he had a son named Jared. Mahalalel had more children and died at the age of 895. When Jared was 162, he had a son named Enoch. Jared had more children and died at the age of 962. When Enoch was 65, he had a son named Methuselah, and during the next 300 years he had more children. Enoch truly loved God, and God took him away at the age of 365. When Methuselah was 187, he had a son named Lamech. Methuselah had more children, and died at the age of 969. When Lamech was 182, he had a son. Lamech said,
"I'll name him Noah, because he will give us comfort as we struggle hard to make a living on this land that the Lord has put under a curse."
Lamech had more children and died at the age of 777. After Noah was 500 years old, he had 3 sons and named them Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Genesis 6. More and more people were born until finally they spread all over the earth. Some of their daughters were so beautiful that supernatural beings came down and married the ones they wanted. Then the Lord said,
I won't let my life-giving breath remain in anyone forever. No one will live for more than 120 years.
The children of the supernatural beings who had married these women became famous heroes and warriors. They were called Nephilim, and lived on the earth at that time and even later. The Lord saw how bad the people on earth were, and that everything they thought and planned was evil. He was very sorry that he had made them, and he said,
I'll destroy every living creature on earth. I'll wipe out people, animals, birds, and reptiles. I'm sorry I ever made them.
But the Lord was pleased with Noah, and this is the story about him. Noah was the only person who lived right and obeyed God. He had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. God knew that everyone was terribly cruel and violent, so he told Noah,
Cruelty and violence have spread everywhere. Now I'm going to destroy the whole earth and all its people. Get some good lumber and build a boat. Put rooms in it and cover it with tar inside and out. Make it 450 feet long, 75 feet high, and 45 feet wide. Build a roof on the boat and leave a space of about 18 inches between the roof and the sides. Make the boat 3 stories high and put a door on one side. I'm going to send a flood that will destroy everything that breathes. Nothing will be left alive. But I solemnly promise that you, your wife, your sons, and your daughters-in-law will be kept safe in the boat. Bring into the boat with you a male and a female of every kind of animal and bird, as well as a male and a female of every reptile. I don't want them to be destroyed. Store up enough food both for yourself and for them.
Noah did everything the Lord told him to do. Genesis 7. The Lord told Noah,
Take your whole family with you into the boat, because you are the only one on this earth who pleases me. Take 7 pairs of every kind of animal that can be used for sacrifice, and 1 pair of all others. Also, take 7 pairs of every kind of bird with you. Do this so there will always be animals and birds on the earth. 7 days from now I will send rain that will last for 40 days and nights, and I will destroy all other living creatures I have made.
Noah was 600 years old when he went into the boat to escape the flood, and he did everything the Lord had told him to do. His wife, his sons, and his daughters-in-law all went inside with him. He obeyed God and took a male and a female of each kind of animal and bird into the boat with him. 7 days later, a flood began to cover the earth. Noah was 600 years old when the water under the earth started gushing out everywhere. The sky opened like windows and rain poured down for 40 days and nights. All this began on the 17th day of the second month of the year. On that day, Noah and his wife went into the boat with their 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. They took along every kind of animal, tame and wild, including the birds. Noah took a male and a female of every living creature with him, just as God had told him to do. And when they were all in the boat, God closed the door. For 40 days the rain poured down without stopping, and the water became deeper and deeper, until the boat started floating high above the ground. Finally, the mighty flood was so deep that even the highest mountain peaks were almost 25 feet below the surface of the water. Not a bird, animal, reptile, or human was left alive anywhere on earth. The Lord destroyed everything that breathed. Nothing was left alive except Noah and the others in the boat. 150 days later, the water started going down. Genesis 8. God did not forget about Noah and the animals with him in the boat. So God made a wind blow, and the water started going down. God stopped up the places where the water had been gushing out from under the earth. He also closed up the sky, and the rain stopped. For 150 days, the water slowly went down. Then, on the 17th day of the 7th month of the year, the boat came to rest somewhere in the Ararat Mountains. The water kept going down, and the mountaintops could be seen let her see a well. So she went to the well and filled the skin with water, then gave some to her son. God blessed Ishmael, and as the boy grew older, he became an expert with his bow and arrows. He lived in the Paran desert, and his mother chose an Egyptian woman for him to marry. About this time, Abimelech and his army commander Phicol said to Abraham,
God blesses everything you do. Now I want you to promise in the name of God that you will always be loyal to me and my descendants, just as I have always been loyal to you in this land where you have lived as a foreigner.
And so Abraham promised. One day, Abraham told Abimelech,
Some of your servants have taken over one of my wells.
This is the first I've heard about it.
Abimelech replied.
Why haven't you said something before? I don't have any idea who did it.
Abraham gave Abimelech some sheep and cattle, and then the two men made a peace treaty. Abraham separated 7 female lambs from his flock of sheep, and Abimelech asked,
Why have you done this?
Abraham told him,
I want you to accept these 7 lambs as proof that I dug this well.
So they called the place Beersheba, because they made a treaty there. When the treaty was completed, Abimelech and his army commander Phicol went back to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and worshipped the eternal Lord God. Then Abraham lived a long time as a foreigner in the land of the Philistines. Genesis 22. Some years later, God decided to test Abraham, so he spoke to him. Abraham answered,
Here I am, Lord.
The Lord said,
Go, get Isaac, your only son, the one you dearly love. Take him to the land of Moriah, and I will show you a mountain, where you must sacrifice him to me on the fires of an altar.
So Abraham got up early the next morning and chopped wood for the fire. He put a saddle on his donkey and left with Isaac and 2 servants for the place where God had told him to go. 3 days later, Abraham looked off in the distance and saw the place. He told his servants,
Stay here with the donkey, while my son and I go over there to worship. We will come back.
Abraham put the wood on Isaac's shoulder, but he carried the hot coals and the knife. As the 2 of them walked along, Isaac said,
Father, we have the coals and the wood, but where is the lamb for the sacrifice?
My son,
Abraham answered,
God will provide the lamb.
The 2 of them walked on, and when they reached the place that God had told him about, Abraham built an altar and placed the wood on it. Next, he tied up his son and put him on the wood. He then took the knife and got ready to kill his son. But the Lord's angel shouted from heaven,
Abraham! Abraham!
Here I am,
he answered.
Don't hurt the boy or harm him in any way.
The angel said,
Now I know that you truly obey God, because you were willing to offer him your only son.
Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in the bushes. So he took the ram and sacrificed it in place of his son. Abraham named that place, The Lord Will Provide. And even now people say,
On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided.
The Lord's angel called out from heaven a second time. You were willing to offer the Lord your only son, and so he makes you this solemn promise. I will bless you and give you such a large family that someday your descendants will be more numerous than the stars in the sky or the grains of sand along the beach. They will defeat their enemies and take over the cities where their enemies live. You have obeyed me, and so you and your descendants will be a blessing to all nations on earth. Abraham and Isaac went back to the servants who had come with him, and they returned to Abraham's home in Beersheba. Abraham's brother Nahor had married Milcah, and Abraham was later told that they had 8 sons. Uz was their firstborn, Buz was next, and then there was Kemuel, who became the father of Aram. Their other 5 sons were Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel, who became the father of Rebekah. Nahor also had another wife. Her name was Rumah. She had 4 sons, Tebah, Gaham, Tahash, and Maacah. Genesis 23. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died in Kiriath Arba, better known as Hebron, in the land of Canaan. After Abraham had mourned for her, he went to the Hittites and said,
I live as a foreigner in your land, and I don't own any property where I can bury my wife. Please, let me buy a piece of land.
Sir,
they answered,
you're an important man. Choose the best place to bury your wife. None of us would refuse you a resting place for your dead.
Abraham bowed down and replied,
If you are willing to let me bury my wife here, please ask Zohar's son Ephron to sell me Machpelah Cave at the end of his field. I'll pay what it's worth, and all of you can be witnesses.
Ephron was sitting there near the city gate when Abraham made this request, and he answered,
Sir, the whole field, including the cave, is yours. With my own people as witnesses, I freely give it to you as a burial place for your dead.
Once again Abraham bowed down and said to Ephron,
In front of these witnesses, I offer you the full price so I can bury my wife. Please accept my offer.
But, sir,
the man replied,
the property is worth only 400 pieces of silver. Why should we haggle over such a small amount? Take the land, it's yours.
Abraham accepted Ephron's offer and paid him the 400 pieces of silver in front of everyone at the city gate. That's how Abraham got Ephron's property east of Hebron, which included the field with all its trees, as well as Machpelah Cave at the end of the field. So Abraham buried his wife Sarah in Machpelah Cave that was in the field he had bought from the Hittites. Genesis 24. Abraham was now a very old man. The Lord had made him rich, and he was successful in everything he did. One day Abraham called in his most trusted servant and said to him,
Solemnly promise me, in the name of the Lord, who rules heaven and earth, that you won't choose a wife for my son Isaac from the people here in the land of Canaan. Instead, go back to the land where I was born and find a wife for him from among my relatives.
But the servant asked,
What if the young woman I choose refuses to leave home and come here with me? Should I send Isaac there to look for a wife?
No,
Abraham answered.
Don't ever do that, no matter what. The Lord who rules heaven brought me here from the land where I was born, and promised that he would give this land to my descendants forever. When you go back there, the Lord will send his angel ahead of you to help you find a wife for my son. If the woman refuses to come along, you don't have to keep this promise. But don't ever take my son back there.
So the servant gave Abraham his word that he would do everything he had been told to do. Soon after that, the servant loaded 10 of Abraham's camels with valuable gifts. Then he set out for the city in northern Syria, where Abraham's brother Nahor lived. When he got there, he let the camels rest near the well outside the city. It was late afternoon, the time when the women came out for water. The servant prayed,
You, Lord, are the God my master Abraham worships. Please keep your promise to him and let me find a wife for Isaac today. The young women of the city will soon come to this well for water, and I'll ask one of them for a drink. If she gives me a drink and then offers to get some water for my camels, I'll know she is the one you have chosen and that you have kept your promise to my master.
While he was still praying, a beautiful unmarried young woman came by with a water jar on her shoulder. She was Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Abraham's brother Nahor, and his wife Milcah. Rebekah walked past Abraham's servant, then went over to the well and filled her water jar. When she started back, Abraham's servant ran to her and said,
Please, let me have a drink of water.
I'll be glad to,
she answered. Then she quickly took the jar from her shoulder and held it while he drank. After he had finished, she said,
Now I'll give your camels all the water they want.
She quickly poured out water for them, and she kept going back for more until his camels had drunk all they wanted. Abraham's servant did not say a word, but he watched everything Rebekah did, because he wanted to know for certain if this was the woman the Lord had chosen. The servant had brought along an expensive gold ring and 2 large gold bracelets. When Rebekah had finished bringing the water, he gave her the ring for her nose and the bracelets for her arms. Then he said,
"Please, tell me who your father is. Does he have room in his house for me and my men to spend the night?"
She answered, hold a Adma's 3 sons were Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. Esau took his children and wives, his relatives and servants, his animals and possessions he had gotten while in Canaan, and moved far from Jacob. He did this because the land was too crowded and could not support him and his brother with their flocks and herds. That's why Esau made his home in the hill country of Seir. Esau lived in the hill country of Seir and was the ancestor of the Edomites. Esau had 3 wives, Adah, Basemath, and Oholibamah. Here is a list of his descendants. Esau and Adah had a son named Eliphaz, whose sons were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. Timnah was the other wife of Esau's son Eliphaz, and she had a son named Amalek. Esau and Basemath had a son named Reuel, whose sons were Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. Esau and Oholibamah had 3 sons, Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. Esau and Adah's oldest son was Eliphaz, and the clans that descended from him were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Kenaz, Korah, Gatam, and Amalek. These and Esau's other descendants lived in the land of Edom. The clans that descended from Esau and Basemath's son Reuel were Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. The clans that descended from Esau and Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah, were Jeush, Jalam, and Korah. All of these clans descended from Esau, who was known as Edom. Seir was from the Horite tribe that lived in Edom before the time of Esau. The clans that had descended from him were Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. Lotan's sons were Horai and Heman. His sister was Timnah. Shobal's sons were Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. Zibeon's sons were Ea and Anah, the same Anah who found an oasis in the desert while taking the donkeys of his father out to pasture. Anah's children were Dishon and Oholibamah. Dishon's sons were Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Kiran. Ezer's sons were Bilhan, Zeavan, and Achan. Dishan's sons were Uz and Aaron. The clans of the Horites were Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan, and they lived in the land of Seir. Before there were kings in Israel, the following kings ruled Edom one after another: Bela, son of Beor, from Dinhabah; Jobab, son of Zerah, from Basra; Husham, from the land of Teman; Hadad, son of Bedad, from Avith. Bedad had defeated the Midianites in Moab; Samlah, from Masrekah; Shaul, from the city of Rehoboth on the Euphrates River; Baal-Hanan, son of Akbor; Hadar, from the city of Pau. His wife Mehetabel was the daughter of Matred and the granddaughter of Mezahab. The clans that descended from Esau took their names from their families and the places where they lived. They are Timnah, Alva, Jethath, Oholibamah, Elah, Pinon, Kenaz, Teman, Mibzar, Magdiel, and Iram. These clans descended from Esau, who was known as Edom, the father of the Edomites. They took their names from the places where they settled. Genesis 37. Jacob lived in the land of Canaan, where his father Isaac had lived, and this is the story of his family. When Jacob's son Joseph was 17 years old, he took care of the sheep with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah. But he was always telling his father all sorts of bad things about his brothers. Jacob loved Joseph more than he did any of his other sons, because Joseph was born after Jacob was very old. Jacob had given Joseph a fancy coat to show that he was his favorite son, and so Joseph's brothers hated him and would not be friendly to him. One day, Joseph told his brothers what he had dreamed, and they hated him even more. Joseph said,
"Let me tell you about my dream. We were out in the field, tying up bundles of wheat. Suddenly, my bundle stood up, and your bundles gathered round and bowed down to it."
His brothers asked,
"Do you really think you're going to be king and rule over us?"
Now they hated Joseph more than ever because of what he had said about his dream. Joseph later had another dream, and he told his brothers,
Listen to what else I dreamed. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me.
When he told his father about this dream, his father became angry and said,
What's that supposed to mean? Are your mother and I and your brothers all going to come and bow down in front of you?
Joseph's brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept wondering about the dream. One day when Joseph's brothers had taken the sheep to a pasture near Shechem, his father Jacob said to him,
I want you to go to your brothers. They are with the sheep near Shechem.
Yes, sir,
Joseph answered. His father said,
Go and find out how your brothers and the sheep are doing. Then come back and let me know.
So he sent him from Hebron Valley. Joseph was near Shechem and wandering through the fields when a man asked,
What are you looking for?
Joseph answered,
I'm looking for my brothers who are watching the sheep. Can you tell me where they are?
They're not here anymore,
the man replied.
I overheard them say they were going to Dothan.
Joseph left and found his brothers in Dothan. But before he got there, they saw him coming and made plans to kill him. They said to one another,
Look, here comes the hero of those dreams. Let's kill him and throw him into a pit and say that some wild animal ate him. Then we'll see what happens to those dreams.
Reuben heard this and tried to protect Joseph from them.
Let's not kill him,
he said.
Don't murder him or even harm him. Just throw him into a dry well out here in the desert.
Reuben planned to rescue Joseph later and take him back to his father. When Joseph came to his brothers, they pulled off his fancy coat and threw him into a dry well. As Joseph's brothers sat down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with all kinds of spices that they were taking to Egypt. So Judah said,
What will we gain if we kill our brother and hide his body? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not harm him. After all, he is our brother.
And the others agreed. When the Midianite merchants came by, Joseph's brothers took him out of the well, and for 20 pieces of silver they sold him to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the well and did not find Joseph there, he tore his clothes in sorrow. Then he went back to his brothers and said,
The boy is gone! What am I going to do?
Joseph's brothers killed a goat and dipped Joseph's fancy coat in its blood. After this, they took the coat to their father and said,
We found this. Look at it carefully and see if it belongs to your son.
Jacob knew it was Joseph's coat and said,
It's my son's coat. Joseph has been torn to pieces and eaten by some wild animal.
Jacob mourned for Joseph a long time, and to show his sorrow, he tore his clothes and wore sackcloth. All of Jacob's children came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted.
No,
he said,
I will go to my grave mourning for my son.
So Jacob kept on grieving. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold Joseph in Egypt to a man named Potiphar, who was the king's official in charge of the palace guard. Genesis 38. About that time, Judah left his brothers in the hill country and went to live near his friend Hira in the town of Adullam. While there, he met the daughter of Shua, a Canaanite man. Judah married her, and they had 3 sons. He named the first one She named the next one Onan. The third one was born when Judah was in Chezib, and she named him Shelah. Later, Judah chose Tamar as a wife for his oldest son. But was very evil, and the Lord took his life. So Judah told Onan,
It's your duty to marry Tamar and have a child for your brother.
Onan knew the child would not be his, and when he had sex with Tamar, he made sure that she would not get pregnant. The Lord wasn't pleased with Onan and took his life too. Judah did not want the same thing to happen to his son Shelah, and he told Tamar,
Go home to your father and live there as a widow until my son Shelah is grown.
So Tamar went to live with her father. Some years later, Judah's wife died, and he mourned for her. He then went with his friend Hira to the town of Timnah, where his sheep were being sheared. Tamar found out that her father-in-law Judah was going to Timnah to shear his sheep. She also realized that Shelah was now a grown man, but she had not been allowed to marry him. So she decided to dress in something other than her widow's clothes and to cover her face with a veil. After this, she sat outside the town of Enaim on the road to Timnah. When Judah came along, he did not recognize her because of the veil. He thought she was a prostitute and asked her to sleep with him. She asked,
"What will you give me if I do?"
"One of my young goats,"
he answered.
"What will you give me to keep until you send the goat?"
She asked.
"What do you want?"
he asked in return.
"The ring on that cord around your neck,"
was her reply.
"I also want the special walking stick you have with you."
He gave them to her. They slept together, and she became pregnant. After returning home, Tamar took off the veil and dressed in her widow's clothes again. Judah had his friend Hira take a goat to the woman, so he could get back the ring and walking stick, but she wasn't there. Hira asked the people of Enaim,
"Where is the prostitute who sat along the road outside your town?"
"There's never been one here,"
they answered. Hira went back and told Judah,
"I couldn't find the woman, and the people of Enaim said no prostitute had ever been there."
"If you couldn't find her, we'll just let her keep the things I gave her,"
Judah answered.
"And we'd better forget about the goat, or else we'll look like fools."
About 3 months later, someone told Judah,
"Your daughter-in-law Tamar has behaved like a prostitute, and now she's pregnant."
"Drag her out of town and burn her to death,"
Judah shouted. As Tamar was being dragged off, she sent someone to tell her father-in-law,
"The man who gave me this ring, this cord, and this walking stick is the one who got me pregnant."
"Those are mine,"
Judah admitted.
"She's a better person than I am, because I broke my promise to let her marry my son Shelah."
After this, Judah never slept with her again. Tamar later gave birth to twins, but before either of them was born, one of them stuck a hand out of her womb. The woman who was helping tied a red thread around the baby's hand and explained,
"This one came out first."
Right away, his hand went back in, and the other child was born first. The woman then said,
"What an opening you've made for yourself."
So they named the baby Perez. When the brother with the red thread came out, they named him Zerah. Genesis 39. The Ishmaelites took Joseph to Egypt and sold him to Potiphar, the king's official in charge of the palace guard. So Joseph lived in the home of Potiphar, his Egyptian owner. Soon Potiphar realized that the Lord was helping Joseph to be successful in whatever he did. Potiphar liked Joseph and made him his personal assistant, putting him in charge of his house and all of his property. Because of Joseph, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's family and fields. Potiphar left everything up to Joseph, and with Joseph there, the only decision he had to make was what he wanted to eat. Joseph was well built and handsome, and Potiphar's wife soon noticed him. She asked him to